Hello and welcome. My name is Kelly Besco, and I've shared a short summary of my professional background at the end of these slides. The title of my presentation is High Reliability Organizations. This is the relevant financial relationship disclosure for this presentation. These are the learning objectives that will be addressed during this presentation. These are the key abbreviations that will be used in this presentation. We will begin with a self-assessment question that we'll revisit at the conclusion of the presentation. Here is the question. Which of the following principles of HRO focuses on containing failures? Is it A, preoccupation with failure, B, deference to expertise, C, reluctance to simplify, or D, sensitivity to operations? This question will be displayed again at the end of the presentation, and I'll go over the answer and rationale. This is what we all want and deserve as both a patient or as an employee. 1, to be kept safe by preventing patient and employee harm. 2, to make me better by providing evidence-based high-quality care and by giving employees the tools they need to perform their job well. And 3, to be treated with kindness and compassion by communicating clearly with empathy and creating a just culture where employees feel safe to report errors and safety concerns without fear of punishment. These 3 things is what an exceptional experience looks like and is what we all want and deserve. Yet despite our best intentions to provide these things, system breakdowns occur that lead to preventable harm. This is why many healthcare organizations have committed themselves to become a high reliability organization, commonly referred to as an HRO. So what are HROs? Well, HROs are industries like nuclear power and the aerospace industry that consistently avoid accidents and catastrophes despite the high risk levels associated with their work environments. They have a culture and a set of management principles that reinforce error-free performance, and they also have an environment of collective mindfulness where employees look for and report small problems or unsafe conditions before they pose a significant risk. HROs value the detection of errors and close calls for lessons learned they can provide on weaknesses in processes that can be fixed to prevent the occurrence of future events. Before I dive into the 5 principles of HROs, I want to spend some time going over the hallmarks that underlie high reliability science. These hallmarks were developed by engineers who studied large accidents like the 1986 Challenger disaster and played a key role in defining what high reliability is. First, there's situational awareness. This is observing the conditions around you and anticipating potential risk. The second hallmark, psychological safety, refers to a culture where anyone can express ideas, concerns, or mistakes without fear of negative consequences or punishment, regardless of the role they hold in an organization. Sharing lessons learned or storytelling is a rich way to create visibility to identified risk and praise employees for practicing safe behaviors. HROs are laser focused on continuous improvement and practicing mindful organizing, where those on the front line where the work is being done are empowered to anticipate and recover from errors, taking swift action. So what exactly can healthcare learn from HROs? It is important to note that cultural values, processes, and outcomes associated with high reliability have yet to be broadly embraced in healthcare. As many of us have experienced, routine processes often fail, like medication administration and communications during handoffs, and preventable events continue to occur. By modeling HRO principles in healthcare and consistently maintaining high levels of quality and safety, we can achieve zero harm. And when I say zero harm, I mean zero harmful events of any kind for not only the patients we serve, but also for those of us that work as healthcare professionals. Now let's perform a deeper dive into the 5 principles of high reliability that explain how HROs create a culture of collective mindfulness. HROs concentrate 80% of their time anticipating risk or staying out of trouble by noticing the unexpected in the making and halting its development. The remaining 20% of time is allocated to containing risk or getting out of trouble and bouncing back from events that do end up occurring. I'll now break down these principles one at a time and provide examples of specific practices healthcare organizations can embrace in adopting them. HROs are constantly preoccupied with failure, always anticipating and planning for how things could go wrong and where processes could break down. They proactively address those risk points early when they are easier to fix, regardless if an actual error has occurred or not. One of my favorite real-life examples of this principle involves former Olympian Michael Phelps. Prior to an event at the Beijing Olympics, Phelps's coach, Bob Bowman, accidentally stepped on his goggles, cracking them just before his 200-meter butterfly final. He didn't realize his goggles were damaged until he dived into the pool and they started filling up with water. Incredibly, Phelps did not panic. He knew precisely what to do because he and Bowman had devised a strategy for this unexpected scenario. Bowman had made Phelps practice at night in the dark and trained to know precisely how many strokes it took to complete a lap. When his goggles filled up with water, he couldn't see a thing and essentially was swimming in the dark, but he remained calm, counting 21 strokes per lap as he had practiced, and he ended up winning the gold medal and breaking the world record for that event. Rather than being preoccupied with what could go wrong, in healthcare, we tend to accept failure as an inevitable element of our daily work. Here are a few HRO practices organizations are adopting to embrace this particular HRO principle. The first example is tiered safety huddles. At nuclear power plants, each day begins with a Plan of the Day meeting, which is a 30-minute meeting of plant leaders. The typical agenda includes a review of emergent safety issues, status of the plant's top 10 problem list, routine reports, and priorities for the day. If any problems are identified, clear ownership for resolution is assigned. Many healthcare organizations have adopted a similar approach using a tiered structure with escalating levels, helping teams identify potential risk before harm occurs. Huddles begin at Tier 1 at the front line where care is delivered. Issues are then escalated through managers and directors until they reach executive leadership as depicted here on the right with the CEO represented on Tier 5. The agenda for a safety huddle is pretty straightforward. Each department is asked to report on safety concerns that have occurred in the last 24 hours, known as a look back. Then they look ahead on what risks they could anticipate for the next 24 hours. Huddles allow each level of the organization to quickly cascade information and feedback and share lessons learned. Many organizations utilize a script to ensure huddles are conducted in a standardized fashion, and departments are encouraged to utilize red words to trigger thought and discussion on common risks. From a medication safety standpoint, a red word on drug shortages or high alert medications may be used. Like the Michael Phelps goggle example, organizations may also conduct simulation exercises to ensure staff are prepared to respond to an emergent situation, like a code or postpartum hemorrhage. Lastly, medication safety leaders can use case scenarios for in-the-moment learning where staff members are asked, "What would you do?" This can improve the ability of frontline staff to handle difficult situations and create the opportunity for shared learning. The second principle of high reliability is the reluctance to simplify. What this boils down to is the unwillingness to simplify your understanding of your organization and its processes. In healthcare, we tend to embrace one-size-fits-all best practices for almost everything. However, we know errors have complex causes and can expose themselves over time in several ways. Understanding and expecting complexity and interpreting risk provides opportunity for insights and early detection of threats. So when HROs identify a risk, they discover and validate where the source of harm is and develop solutions to address it. In healthcare, we tend to find quick solutions because it's more efficient. It's honestly our culture and how we're wired. A more reliable approach to prevent recurrence of errors is to take the time to fully understand root causes and have some tolerance for uncertainty. So how can we embrace this particular principle in healthcare? A sound approach is having a robust cause analysis program in place to detect and correct system failures or holes in the Swiss cheese present on the blunt end of our processes and develop layered, high-leverage mitigation strategies to correct those failures. We also need to promote good practice habits at the sharp end that empowers staff to make sound behavioral choices. In my experience, nearly all root cause analysis action plans include some sort of education. However, the impact of education wanes over time. In fact, studies have shown that we only retain 44% of the information that we learned yesterday. To impact behavior at the sharp end, we need to turn desired behavior into habits, and there's an actual science behind how habits are formed. Typically, there's a cue that triggers the desired behavior or habit. If an individual experiences a reward from engaging in the behavior, they are more likely to engage in the behavior again when presented with that cue. Let's demonstrate this with a real-life example. When my teeth feel grimy, a cue, I brush them, which is the routine. My reward is a brighter smile that makes me more likely to brush them again. Cues like visual artifacts, sharing lessons learned stories, and leader rounding assist in initiating desired behaviors, and having recognition programs in place to reward individuals for those behaviors help turn those into habits. Rewards can include public recognition or a tangible award. For example, at my organization, we have a virtual high five system where someone can submit a recognition that is associated with points. Staff are able to accumulate their points and turn them in for a reward like a gift card. The recognitions are also posted on a public feed that everyone in the organization can see. The final HRO principle focused on anticipation is sensitivity to operations. Sensitivity to operations is the ability of those on the front line doing the work to recognize potential threats. Staff are trained, empowered, and expected to recognize, isolate, and address detected irregularities. Staff are additionally obligated to speak up, and leadership fosters a culture where staff are encouraged to report errors and unsafe conditions. To encourage reporting, there needs to be a high level of psychological safety where anyone, regardless of their role in the organization, is empowered to speak up, and in doing so, they know they will not be made to look incompetent. When staff are afraid of looking ignorant, they will be less likely to ask questions, offer ideas, or challenge the status quo. Staff also need to know that if they admit to a personal mistake, that they will be treated fairly in a just culture. Studies have shown that less than 10% of errors are actually reported, which is just the tip of the iceberg. However, we know, just like with that iceberg, there is a giant mass under the water. If people feel psychologically safe and know they will be treated fairly, we can begin to expose and lift up that large mass of opportunities that reside under the water's surface. The last two principles I'll review focus on containment, the first being a commitment to resilience. HROs recognize that despite their best efforts, errors will still occur. Resilience refers to an organization's ability to recognize errors, quickly remediate them, and then recover. HROs learn from errors and design high-leverage mitigation strategies to prevent ongoing failure. Peer support programs support staff involved with bouncing back from events that occur. Many organizations have established well-being champion programs that serve as a network of frontline staff who provide formal and informal emotional support to their peers and share well-being information and strategies. Although they can be common in healthcare, critical incidents cause psychological distress that can disrupt someone's ability to cope. Critical incident response teams and programs provide support to individuals and teams in the immediate aftermath of a critical incident, like a mass casualty or significant safety event, and ensure the right support is provided to impacted individuals and teams. The final HRO principle is deference to expertise. This means delegating problem solving and decision making to the people within the organization who have the most experience, insight, and knowledge of the issue at hand, regardless of the role they hold in the organization. Those closest to the process and work know it better than those farther away from it and are likely able to come up with the best mitigation strategies. For example, at Starbucks, they are focused on giving their employees a high sense of authority. They have included staff in redesigning how espresso machines and cash registers are laid out to decide for themselves how customers should be greeted and where merchandise should be displayed. This approach has resulted in decreased turnover, increased customer satisfaction, and increased revenue. In healthcare, we tend to have hierarchies that prevent those closest and most knowledgeable about the work from speaking up. Intimidating behaviors reinforce a power distance, creating a disadvantage. In healthcare, we often see power distance in relationships where they are a bit more autocratic, where one person tells the other what to do, and power is based on formal positions. These relationships are why having an escalation process can be beneficial in allowing anyone in the organization to speak up. Many organizations have adopted a stop the line phrase, where any team member can immediately pause or halt the care process if they perceive a safety risk or error and advocate for the issue to be addressed before anyone proceeds. Peer influencers focus on promoting and reinforcing safe practices to prevent harm to patients and staff. They act as advocates and mentors using coaching techniques to encourage safe behaviors. These individuals work with their peers to address areas of risk and help identify solutions for improvement. Kaizen is a Japanese term translated as change for the better. It is typically a week-long process improvement event in which those who do the work come together to develop improvements and focus on making efficiencies by eliminating waste and processes. As we end the presentation, let's return to our self-assessment question. Which of the following principles of HRO focuses on containing failures? Is it A, preoccupation with failure, B, deference to expertise, C, reluctance to simplify, or D, sensitivity to operations? The correct response is B, deference to expertise, which is a containment HRO principle where problem solving and decision making is delegated to people that have the most experience, insight, and knowledge of the issue at hand, regardless of the role they hold in the organization. In conclusion, HROs view near-miss reports as warning signals of larger problems. They reward employees for reporting errors and failures and create a culture of psychological safety where people feel comfortable speaking up, and they encourage employees to anticipate failure, and leadership recognizes those closest to the work have the best understanding of risks. These are the references used to develop this presentation. Thank you for your time and participation.